Hello. Just want to make sure the focus here is clear. This is not a video I've particularly planned, so I haven't written down what I'm going to say or anything like that. I'm just speaking spontaneously. The result, of course, of the Labour leadership election is in today, and Jeremy Corbyn has secured a massive landslide. There's no way to escape it. This is an outright landslide. Um, the results were 59.5% for Mr. Corbyn, 19% for Andy Burnham, 17% for Yvette Cooper, and 4.5% for Liz Kendall. The deputy leader was announced as Tom Watson. So just want to reflect a little bit on this and my thoughts both on Mr. Corbyn, Mr. Watson, and the implications for both the Labour Party and the country. Um, I've made a few videos about Jeremy Corbyn because I do believe that the Labour Party is the largest opposition party in this. That Jeremy Corbyn would win. But this was a truly staggering landslide. Apparently, 85% of the new entrants, which itself was a controversial issue, but 85% of the new entrants have backed Corbyn. But it's important to say this was across the board. Um, in terms of his victory speech, I have to say he was very gracious. He cracked a joke about the him and the other three being an ABBA tribute band. Um, he he was gracious to his three opponents. He commended Andy Burnham for his work on comprehensive schools. He commended Yvette Cooper for her humanitarian efforts on the Syrian refugees. Incidentally, he said later today that he would attend a rally in support of Syrian refugees in London. And most significantly, he also praised Liz Kendall for her conviction. It's no secret that throughout this campaign they have been polar opposites of the political spectrum. Jeremy Corbyn seen as being on the hard left or old Labour, whatever you want to call it. Liz Kendall's an ultra Blairite. He even used the word friends, which definitely surprised me. He said she's my friend, and he praised her for her conviction. I will say one thing about that. A lot of people accuse Liz Kendall of lacking conviction because she's perceived as being a right wing and she's in the Labour Party. Um, I I don't agree with that. I actually agree with what Jeremy Corbyn said. Whatever you think of Liz Kendall, and believe me, I'm not a big fan of hers at all. But I think to take an unpopular position and stand by it in itself demonstrates conviction, and she has done that. She has taken unpopular positions in terms of her attitude to the economic recovery and basically austerity light. And she knows it's unpopular and she's stuck by that. So you have to give her due in that sense. She's tough and she has conviction. So I do agree with Jeremy Corbyn on that. Conviction is indeed a word that is often associated with Mr. Corbyn. And the speech was a refreshing speech insofar as he said what was on his mind. He spoke about the disgraceful way in which the government has hammered the poor in this country. And for example, his seat is Islington North, which is in North London, and he's blasted the social cleansing in London. Now, I don't know enough about the situation in London to comment in detail about that, but I think that shows that he's not beating around the bush, which is a good thing. Another thing that I really liked in the speech was when he was praising Ed Miliband, the former leader, and he lambasted the way the press pilloried Mr. Miliband. Now, if they give Miliband a hard time, I guarantee you the right-wing press are absolutely going to lay into Jeremy Corbyn from day one. Um, and as much as I'm not a Jeremy Corbyn supporter, I'll just say that outright, if that wasn't clear already. But I don't believe that any political candidate, whether left, right, or centre, should be pilloried by the press in a way that is completely out of balance. And I think that is definitely the case when you have left wing leaders. the Murdoch press absolutely didn't bash them. Maybe, to be fair, you could say that the Daily Mirror does the same thing for against David Cameron. But the point is, we have a press, and I won't talk too much about this because it isn't the main focus of the video. But having a free press is very, very important. But that in this country, I believe it has got to the extent where we have a very arrogant press who basically they want scandal and they want. I mean, seconds after this announcement, the Tory Graph, which is supposedly a quality paper, but as far as I'm concerned, it was acting like a tabloid rag. We're already trying to dig up dirt by saying that Mr. Corbyn's ex-wife supported Yvette Cooper. Now, even if that's a statement of fact, it's blatantly an attempt to try and just dig up dirt on the man. Like, oh, look at even his wife won't support him, this sort of thing. It's pathetic, and it's a move by a desperate tabloid. Well, in this case, Daily Telegraph editor. I just think it's irrelevant. Um, anyway, the point is he has a very strong mandate. Now, on Mr. Corbyn himself and his policies, I'll come to Tom Watson in a minute, but I've said I'm not a supporter of Jeremy Corbyn, and this is why. Um, I absolutely recognise that the issues he is talking about in terms of social compassion, in terms of fighting inequality, and in terms of taking on the ruthlessness of the Tories, those are things I can completely get on board with. So I don't so much have a problem with his domestic policies, although I've seen nothing, for example, on his answer to crime. And if he was to take the position of blaming all crime on poverty and not making any responsibility whatsoever to criminals, that's something I could not endorse because I'm someone who's pretty hard line on crime, to be blunt about it. I believe criminals are 100% responsible for their own actions. I don't know what Mr. Corbyn's position is on that, so I'm not going to jump to conclusions, but I would like to find out because it is an important issue. Um, Other domestic issues. Actually, one thing that kept coming up today, this isn't so much to do with Jeremy Corbyn, but just generally the Labour Party and the BBC kept going on about the position of women. Now, um, this is utterly absurd. I think that one reason Yvette Cooper may have lost votes was she constantly spoke about being Labour's first woman leader and elect her for that reason. I think she scored an own goal with that because I think that Yvette Cooper is a very skilled and experienced politician. I don't think she needed to do that. And I think she would have got a bit more support had she not focused so much on that. Because although the Labour Party has a brand of militant feminism within it, I think a lot of Labour members themselves don't particularly care much for that because they recognise that someone's ability should not be based on their gender. It shouldn't be judged on their gender. Jane Hill of the BBC asked a rather nauseating question about, oh, in this day and age, is it really modern for the Labour Party to be led by two men? Um, and the Birmingham MP, Jess Phillips, said something similar that Jeremy Corbyn's a white male Londoner. Now, these issues are utterly irrelevant. What we should judge leaders on is their policies, their ideas about how to fix society's problems. Anybody that thinks someone should be judged on their gender is just, that's ridiculous. And it is the absolute opposite of egalitarianism. So that was one thing that did irritate me a bit in both the reporting and some of the attitudes. Of course, it would be great to see more women in Parliament, but that's not over the fact that there are many issues that impact men in society, issues that are callously ignored at the moment to a large extent. Um, I'm an egalitarian, so I believe that both men's issues and women's issues should be addressed. The Labour Party only believes in addressing women's issues, and actually, they, for all the talk about it, they're not outstanding. And the fact of the matter is, they've elected two men, so that proves that Labour members don't share that sort of militant be elected because of your gender attitude, and that in itself is a good thing. In terms of the election, it's been great for democracy in the sense that it has energized a lot of people. That can only be a good thing for democracy. Um, like I say, Jeremy Corbyn was very amicable to his opponents. And to be fair to them, they weren't sour grapes about it. They all congratulated him and immediately embraced him. Whether they serve with him or not is another matter. And over the coming days, there's going to be big questions about who will be his shadow chancellor and so on. With speculation it could be John McDonnell, who's another veteran left winger and backbencher, and that will, according to the BBC, cause an explosion in the Labour Party. Okay, so domestically, I don't know much about Jeremy Corbyn's crime policies, but I cannot disagree with his response to equality in society in terms of economic equality issues. I do believe he has compassion on that, and I think that is definitely to be welcomed. He's also taken a compassionate stance on the refugees, although it was actually Yvette Cooper who was the first candidate to really raise that issue. So again, I give him credit for that, and that's something I'm sympathetic to. Um, Now, foreign policy. Um, this is an area where I'm quite wary about Mr. Corbyn. Um, he's made a lot of points in the speech about being a force for good in the world and peace and so on. Well, that's all very well. That's utopian sort of language. But I really do have reservations as to how Jeremy Corbyn will approach ISIS. Now, people can argue as much as they want about where ISIS began and so on. I'm well aware that many people say it's the West that funded them in the first place. But I think everyone can agree that ISIS is a brutal terrorist organization. Now, of course, Jeremy Corbyn doesn't support ISIS. Of course not. But I'm yet to see him make any sort of commitment whatsoever as to how he will take on ISIS. And I take the view that as a major player in the world, we simply cannot ignore this threat. We simply cannot look away and say, oh, well, it's none of our business. Jeremy Corbyn needs to come up with answers pretty fast. If his Labour Party is going to oppose any government action on Syria, such as airstrikes, um, then they're going to have to come up with a viable alternative. And it can't simply be say, "Oh, war is bad, so but that's it." That's fine, but at least come up with an alternative as to how to deal with the problem of ISIS. How will Jeremy Corbyn deal with young jihadists going over to the Middle East? How will Jeremy Corbyn deal with homegrown threats? These are all valid questions. How will Jeremy Corbyn deal with the very real problem of political Islamism in this country? So far, I've seen nothing to suggest that he is going to take that problem seriously. And that's not slandering the man. I'm just honestly saying I haven't yet to see him speak about that important issue. Um, Certainly, I did not like his attitude to, and I know I've mentioned this before, but I did not like his attitude when asked about the IRA. For all his so-called straight talking, he could not simply condemn the IRA. He made a generic condemnation of violence in Northern Ireland, but he could not bring himself to specifically condemn the IRA. And my point of view is that anybody can make a generic condemnation of violence, but if you are a leader and you're asked a specific question and you skirt around that, then people will jump to conclusions. So that was one occasion when he was not straight talking. I'm sorry, but he wasn't. And being from Northern Ireland, I do think that is quite frankly disgraceful. Um, all he had to do was come out and say the IRA were responsible for atrocities. What did he do? He just tried to turn it around and say, oh, but so were the British. Now, there would be nothing wrong with saying that in itself, as long as he balanced it. But, that's something that I had a big problem with. Um, So I'm trying to be objective on Jeremy Corbyn. There is a lot of areas I appreciate he is very outspoken on, and I appreciate it because someone does need to stand up to this Tory war on in terms of dividing society. Like war, I'm talking metaphorically, of course. I'm talking about this vicious campaign of dividing people in society. Although if no, Jeremy Corbyn has spoken of having a left cabinet being inclusive. That's a very good thing, and I hope he sticks to it. Because if it's a far left cabinet, a hard left cabinet, then that's just going to be as divisive as the Tories. It will, because then anybody who has a small business or who has ambitions, for example, in business or anything like that, is going to have serious questions, i.e., will the Labour Party support them? Um, I think it was Tom Watson said, uh, there's not a contradiction between being pro-business and pro-worker. Well, it's great. I agree with that. But the Labour Party will also need to show that they're not like it's all very well talking about workers and the working class, and that's great. That's what the Labour Party's founded on. But you can't ignore the middle class either in Middle England. I know that's associated with Blairism and all the rest of it, but you can't just dismiss it. Um, so it will be interesting to see in the days and months ahead what approach Jeremy Corbyn will take to this. Um, I think there's been a little bit of fear mongering, perhaps, on the part of Blairites, sort of saying that this is going to be like, it's going to be a sort of case of a hard left cabinet. I don't think it will be that. I think he probably will stick to his word on being inclusive, and that's very important. But time will tell. As for him being gone by next summer, I doubt that. I My own instinct is that he will be a more durable leader than Michael Foot. If you don't know British politics, Michael Foot was a hard left Labour leader in the early 80s, and many people say he absolutely brought the party down the wrong path. The 80s was a very difficult time for the Labour Party. There was the militant tendency, which was a far left faction that tried to enter into the party. Basically, the Labour Party had an identity crisis. I would say the Labour Party, much more than the Conservatives, the Liberal Democrats, or the SNP, has had an internal identity crisis over the years. So it's all very well for Labour MPs to talk about unity. That's great, but to really, really show that unity, it's going to take effort on both sides. From Jeremy Corbyn's point of view, he'll have to stand by his commitment to be inclusive. So he's going to need to bring Blairites into his cabinet. And from their point of view, he is the leader, so they have to be accommodating. They have to respect him as leader, and not make his job difficult, because I think that would be, that in itself is a recipe for disaster. I'm not a member of the Labour Party, and at present I'm in no rush to join the Labour Party. The reason being, there's simply too many areas I disagree with Labour on. I'm still much more sympathetic to Labour than I am to the Conservatives, but I have too many question marks about issues like Labour's response to political Islamism, Labour's attitude to gender issues, which I've already spoken about, because I think the premise is completely wrong that someone should be elevated or judged on their gender. I just think the premise is wrong. Um, yeah, and there's other areas I'm not so convinced about Labour, but there's plenty of people in the Labour Party I respect, and I think fundamentally the heart is in the right place. I do think it's much more egalitarian party than the Tories, fundamentally speaking. Um, and finally, I think I've said pretty much everything I can say here. The coming weeks are going to show us what will happen. It may well be that Jeremy Corbyn is a complete disaster for the Labour Party, but no one can deny that this has been a bit of a shake-up. Um, and I think time will tell. I mean, it could be that he is not another Michael Foot. It could be that he is another Clement Attlee. Time will tell. As for his age, 66, well, I really think in politics, age is just a number. It really depends on the personal vigor. I think Jeremy Corbyn has shown that he can run an energetic campaign. Yes, he's 66, but, you know, Hammerstone was 71, Gladstone was 85, so really, 66 isn't that old. Um, Time will tell. Um, Will he be prime minister? I think that's far fetched. And if it can happen in 5 years, this country is going to have major questions. We could have a new monarch. Scotland could break away. There's going to be a lot of questions over the next 5 years, 4.5 years, and it's going to be interesting. Um, Personally, I've mixed feelings. It's good for democracy today, and definitely I do think it's important that someone stands up for the Tories. Now, the thing about Cooper, Burnham, and especially Kendall, they were, especially Cooper and Burnham, were saying the right things, but there was something that they just seemed to lack the passion that Jeremy Corbyn had. And I don't actually believe that they didn't believe that. I believe they hate the Tories and the Tories' attitude just as much as Jeremy Corbyn does. But there was something about their approach that I think they were both looking at Middle England, whereas Jeremy Corbyn really was looking at the base much more. The thing is, Andy Burnham would have been the token left-wing candidate, centre-left candidate, and Andy Burnham, as far as I'm concerned, has Prime Minister written all over him. He's intelligent, he's smart, he's experienced, he he ticks all the boxes, but he happened to come into the same race as Jeremy Corbyn, and this is what's happened. I'd like to see Andy Burnham in a senior position in a Corbyn cabinet, and I'd like to see him run again. I'm not saying I absolutely agree with everything that Andy Burnham stands for. I don't think you could say that for any candidate, but personally, he would have been my man if I was a member of the Labour Party. So I'll leave it there. Let me know your thoughts. Are you happy? Are you worried? Are you whatever? Let me know your thoughts. I'm not a Jeremy Corbyn supporter, but I believe I've tried to be objective in this video. I congratulate him. It is a remarkable achievement for a man who's been 32 years on the backbenches. But now he can no longer be a rebel. Now he has to be a leader. And there is going to be a lot of expectation. And now he's in a leadership position. It's going to, he's on the other side of the fence. So that's going to be interesting. Okay, thanks for watching.